Hi guys, I'm Wizzy and welcome to my channel. Now let's dive into the review of the book. Picking up on where we left off on the last episode, Prince Harry and his father agreed that Prince Harry would join the army. His father recommended that he take a gap year, and when he considered where he might go, Prince Harry decided that he would spend his gap year in Australia and Lesotho. And this is where this episode picks up from. Somehow he found his mother's friend, who had been his mother's former flatmate at the time she had started dating Prince Charles. She was now married with 3 kids and lived in Australia with her husband. She agreed to allow him come visit and learn how to work as a cowhand, a jackaroo. Prince Harry's description of the kind of heat he experienced when he went to Australia for his gap year was so very funny. He said, "I wilted at the mere mention of heat. How was I supposed to put up with an oven inside a blast furnace, inside a nuclear reactor set on top of an active volcano?" Prince Harry didn't shy away from the hard work to be found on the farm. Rather, he seemed to lose himself in it. I almost missed the reference Harry made to his recovery at the farm because it was just so innocuously stated. But listen as he says, "George and I usually hit the sack about 8:30. Often we were too tired to take off our clothes. I was no longer afraid of the dark. I craved it. I slept as if dead, woke as if reborn." Prince Harry also says there were no days off. Between the relentless work, the relentless heat, the relentless cows, I could feel myself being whittled down, lighter each morning by a kilo, quieter by a few dozen words. Away from the constant and harsh gaze of the media, he could feel himself relaxing, healing from the stress of being under the spotlight of the media all the time and the royal shenanigans. The pain that came from his duty to allow himself to be offered up as a sacrifice for anyone higher up in the royal hierarchy was absent, because he was away from it all. And he told us about his other nicknames. Soon enough, he says, my mates at home got wind of this new nickname and adopted it. I became Spike when I wasn't Haz or Baz or Prince Jackaroo or Harold or Darling Boy or Scrawny, a nickname given me by some palace staff. Ooh, what do I see here? Harry had been called Haz even before he met Meghan. It makes you wonder why Meghan was so viciously mocked when it was reported that Meghan's nickname for Harry was Haz. Was this subtle clapback for the way Meghan was mocked in the news for calling him the nickname every person he knew had been calling him way before she came onto the scene? Just look at the newspaper article which is currently on the screen. Royal Roast. Meghan Markle let slip Prince Harry's private nickname and the royal got mocked for it. This is just one of 100 articles which have been written about people hearing her call Harry Haz. As I was looking into Prince Harry's time in Australia, I could see that when Harry and Meghan went to Australia on a royal tour, he brought Meghan to one of the farms. And I think it was sweet that Harry was able to bring Meghan to a farm in Australia. Seemed like he was trying to share every part of his life, including his experience during his gap year with her, where he discovered what it would feel like to be out of the glare of the media and the stress of the royal family. So Harry talks us through how he had been informed that a butler had written a tell-all book about his mother. He says one day the package contained a series of memos from the palace comms team about a delicate matter. Mummy's former butler had written a tell-all which actually told nothing. The book in question he was referring to here was A Royal Duty. Harry said he was so angry it made his blood boil. He wanted to confront the butler, but his dad and William had advised him against it. He had been told that all the royal family could do was to issue a statement, and request a meeting to find out what the butler really wanted. But to his greatest surprise, in typical royal family fashion, the meeting never happened. When I went looking for the details of the book Prince Harry was referring to, I found the statement which had been issued by the royal family and Paul Burrell respectively. Reading it seemed performative and a big fat nothing burger, as Baron of the Royal Sussex YouTube channel would say. There was no request for a meeting in the royal family statement. Curious, and it begins to make sense if you quote the reference to the trial at the Old Bailey Paul Burrell himself referenced in his own statement. What is she talking about, do I hear you say? Let's visit Paul Burrell's statement. He said, I would also like to point out, following the collapse of my trial at the Old Bailey last year, no one from the royal family contacted me or said sorry for the unnecessary ordeal myself, my wife, and my sons were put through. Thinking about it, this seems to be fighting talk from a servant to the royal family. And yet the royal family did nothing. Curious, no? And yet they have done so much to Harry and Meghan just because they had the audacity to step back from working as senior members of the royal family. I also wondered why it was Harry and William who had issued the statement and not their legal guardian, Prince Charles. This brings to mind questions like, what was the trial in the Old Bailey about? And why did it involve the royal family? Okay, I'll tell you. In 2001, Paul Burrell was charged to court because 310 items belonging to Princess Diana were found in his possession. Interestingly, among the most serious disclosures which arose from the trial are those relating to Prince Charles and the attempts made on his behalf to stop the prosecution from going to trial. I know, what? Never mind, we'll get into that. But before we do, can we have a look at the article on the left-hand side and the name of the reporter who published this article? This is the same Tambauer who has written such negative articles about Meghan Markle. In reaction to the release of the Spare, even though Prince Harry never named him directly, Paul Burrell went on a never-ending tour of the various media houses, granting interviews left and right, giving his expert opinion on the state of the relationship between Harry and his family. Paul Burrell was a butler. It does make you wonder what he knows which has guaranteed his safety to the point that a servant of the realm has this freedom to discuss the royal family so freely and openly. What does he know? How come he's able to speak about the royal family so freely, yet Harry and Meghan cannot even talk about themselves freely without a massive overreaction from the media? Makes you wonder whether the secret he has is what he wants to share with Harry and William. Just this week or last week, he said he had a secret he wanted to share with Harry and William before he died. Does he really have a secret? Or is this a secret warning to the royal family not to stop making the payments he had been promised? If he had been promised any payments. This situation reminds me of the invisible contract Harry referred to in his and Meghan's Netflix documentary. For instance, in an article written about protecting the privacy of William and Harry, it said, the newspapers and magazines have been extremely good in respecting the privacy of both the princes over the last couple of years, and there is no expectation that will change, Mr. Black said. Although by leaving the confines of Eton, Prince William lost the protection of the code's strict rules covering all school-age children, he continues to benefit from its general guidelines on accuracy, privacy, and harassment. In return for the media's restraint, the palace has organized periodic photo calls at milestones in the prince's lives. Hello? Did you hear? It says the palace has organized periodic photo calls at milestones in the prince's lives in return for the media's restraint. And another section of the article says Prince William agreed to accompany his father to the PCC's 10th birthday celebrations last year in recognition of the newspaper industry's collaboration with the royal family. Hello? They must have entered a similar arrangement with Paul Burrows. What were we talking about before we got into the story about Paul Burrows? Oh yes, we were discussing the fact that Prince Harry had discovered that Paul Burrows had written a book about his mother. Picking the story up from where we left off, Prince Harry reports that after about 9 sweet and blissful weeks on the farm without any press intrusion, the press finally found him. They started sneaking onto the farm, and after it happened the first time, Harry knew that this was his cue to leave to avoid exposing his host to the irritation that is the press intrusion. When he got back to the UK, the press didn't know he was back, and so he decided to make the best of his anonymity by going to the clubs every day of the week. In his own words, I left the club wearing a baseball cap, paps everywhere. Just as we pulled away, a Mercedes with blacked out windows jumped the pavement and swiped out our car, nearly slamming head-on into the rear passenger door. The story in the papers the next morning should have been about Prince Harry nearly being killed by a reckless pap. Instead, it was about Prince Harry meeting and supposedly kissing a page 3 girl, along with much frantic commentary about the horrors of the spare dating such a fallen woman. Third in line to the throne, dating her. The snobbery, the classism was nauseating. The out of order priorities was baffling. Thankfully, within days, Prince Harry went on to the next part of his gap year in Lesotho. We'll wrap up this segment here, but don't go anywhere. Join us in part 2 where we dive into what unfolded during Prince Harry's unforgettable time in Lesotho for the second leg of his gap year. You won't want to miss the next chapter of this incredible story. See you there.